Hi, welcome back to another edition of Showtime on POD, Philippines On Demand. We have a special guest for you, Brian Rzeppa from Trenton, Michigan, author of You're Hired, a guide to working in sports. Straight ahead. Welcome back to Showtime. Our Showtime guest today is Brian Rzeppa, author of the book You're Hired, a guide to working in sports. Brian, thank you very much for visiting with Philippines On Demand today.
Thanks for having me on. Good evening to you.
I'm all the way over here in Davao City, Philippines, and you're there in Trenton, Michigan. And being the author of the book, could you go over your background a little bit for us, please?
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess on the journalistic end, this is my first book. I've written for different online publications and then the local newspaper, the Trenton Trib, for 7 or 8 years now. And as far as my personal background, I have an undergrad degree in sports management. I worked in professional baseball for a couple years for one of the Tigers minor league affiliates, the Detroit Tigers. And just kind of through that experience, I just was kind of motivated to learn how the different people at the top of the food chain in sports get their jobs. So coaches, general managers, athletic directors. And I was curious, so I asked around. I talked to 17 coaches, general managers, athletic directors, kind of got their insights. And so not only for people that I guess are looking to work in sports, just the average sports fan. I think it's just something that is a constant source of conversation within sports circles. Who should be hired, who should be traded, who should be signed. It's just it's an interesting background into how these various things happen, how these people get their jobs, and then what those jobs actually entail once they're in them.
Now, with this book that you wrote, You're Hired, I thumbed through it. I looked at it, and it's really, really in depth, very in depth. So I guess with having said that, does that leave the door open to any sequels of your Hired? Do you foresee yourself writing another publication?
Yeah, I think at some point next year, probably at some point, will be my second book coming out. It's not necessarily 100% related to this one, but it's called The Outliers, being a cultural anomaly in sports. So basically, I spoke to around 40 different athletes for this one, and it's basically people that come from non-traditional backgrounds in sports. So African American hockey players, Asian American basketball players, things of that nature. So just people who don't have the necessary background, normal background, I guess, and kind of understanding why, those people are generally excluded from those sports, why that is, the different challenges they face, and, how we can change moving forward. So that's what's next coming down the line next year. But yeah, it's a long path for that one too.
Now, this might sound like an unusual question, but I am curious if it has any influence and any impact on people, wanting to get into sports. And what I'm referring to is, how has fantasy sports and sports video games, has that influenced people, over the years, or even more so at present day, to want to pursue a job in sports?
Yeah, I think absolutely. I mean, within, a touch of a couple buttons, you can be controlling your favorite team, whether it be, through fantasy football or through, playing Madden or something like that, or playing FIFA or NBA 2K, whatever it may be. So, obviously there's more, there's not, it's very, very hard, and it requires a lot of physical talent to become a professional athlete. But the path to becoming a general manager or coach, it's extremely difficult. Don't get me wrong, but it's still a lot easier than becoming a professional athlete itself. So, I think with that avenue opening up, and people seeing this kind of being able to control their different team, it does provide, I guess, some hope that, hey, maybe this is something that I could do long term. So I think that this kind of does answer a lot of questions and kind of provides a real look at what the job actually entails, as opposed to, just trading and releasing and hiring and firing. There's a ton of work that goes into running an organization.
Brian Rzeppa is our guest today on Showtime here on POD Philippines On Demand. He is the author of the book titled You're Hired, A Guide to Working in Sports. And continue on with Brian. Brian, let me ask you this. I'm sure there are a lot of people that may be curious about this as well. How much has C-19 impacted pro sports this year? May it be contracts, very little to no fans in the stands, maybe player psyche, and even the credibility of crowning a champion. How has that, if any, how has that affected C-19 affected pro sports?
Yeah, I mean, the easier question might be to answer, like, how hasn't it affected? Because really every aspect of professional sports here has just been, it's a completely different landscape and environment. You look at minor league sports, and essentially every minor league has been canceled throughout the course of this year, and a lot of them are even getting canceled into next year already. So I mean, if you look at that from, a foundational aspect, not only are you losing that development for younger players in future years, you're also losing, thousands of jobs across the plane of sports. And, as someone who had previously worked in minor league sports, that's where you learn. That's where you can, get some experience. And not only that, there's so few opportunities within sports and so many people that want to work within sports. So really just killing those opportunities. And then kind of going up to the professional level, you have athletic departments cutting their budgets. You have, Major League Baseball, the NFL, the NBA, they're losing billions of dollars. And, these are billionaires that run these leagues. And I think it would be misguided to think that they're not going to get their money back somehow. So, there's going to be cutbacks in future years. The salary caps are going to be depressed, and that's going to bring down player salaries. And, it's just tough really across the board for everyone. Mm-hmm. And, looking specifically within the college athletic department landscape, now you see sports being cut. I believe it was Clemson just recently cut their track and field team, which you'd think would be one of the mainstays. So it's a really tough environment. And now, working in sports, working as an athletic director or whoever it may be, you're seeing people wear a lot of different hats that they didn't used to. And kind of moving forward, you hope that the people that were in these roles will get them back. But, it's tough to not be cynical and think that, well, this person proved that they can do so many different other things. So why would we need to bring in a different salary? So all you got to hope, it's been incredibly impactful so far, but you just got to hope that, we do return back to some sense of normalcy and these jobs do come back and they aren't lost forever. But, it's tough to remain optimistic about that, just considering how things have went so far.
Yeah. As a fan, I'm asking from your perspective as a fan. They went back and they finished up the hockey season. They finished up the NBA season. And then they squeezed a shortened 60-game season in baseball. Do you think that they did more good or more harm by doing that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that especially with how the different leagues went about it, the NBA had their bubble, the NHL had their two bubble cities, and then the MLB kind of just, went more or less along as normal, just I guess without fans. But just from a fan standpoint, it was great to have sports back. It was nice to have the distraction. I wasn't, having to be up at 3 a.m. and watch Korean baseball. So that was pretty great on my end, at least. But, I know that some people, do question the legitimacy of like, well, you only played 60 games and expanded playoffs and things of that. But I mean, the game is still a game. You in baseball, you've got to get batters out. You've got to, stop goals in hockey. So I know I can definitely understand where people would be, think that it's not, I guess, a legitimate season, but the games are the games, and it is what it is. Everyone's playing on the same playing field. So if I were a fan of the team, I would a fan of the team that won whatever championship it may be. I'm certainly going to have no problem celebrating that.
You really nailed it. Sports is it's a good distraction from everyday life. At first, when they announced that they were going to, continue with the seasons and squeeze in baseball, I was a little bit, kind of nonchalant about it because, it was kind of hard for me to get back into it, because of what was going on. But when it was all said and done, I'm actually glad for the same reasons that you outlined that they did in fact finish the seasons out and play a shortened baseball season. I guess it's better than nothing. Doesn't a coach have to be a little bit of a politician and, in a way, a little bit of a magician? Because you have to, as a coach, people think you just get into the dugout, on the sidelines and you call plays and this and that. There's really not a whole lot to it. I guess from the average fan, we don't understand everything that goes on into being a coach. But getting back to the question at hand, being a magician, being a politician, you have to deal with the players, you have to deal with the players' parents, then there's the agents that you have to deal with. How far down the rabbit hole does a coach have to go in order to be successful?
Yeah, I mean, and especially now you're seeing the roles of coaches continue to evolve, especially within baseball. One of the bigger moments of this baseball season was Game 6 of the World Series. Kevin Cash, the manager of the Rays, pulling his starter after I think 72 pitches. That's something that I'm completely unheard of. Traditional baseball says you have your ace, you leave him in until he's gone. You'd think. And a lot of managers of the past would let him throw double those pitches, get to 130, 140.
Yeah.
And so, now you're expected as a manager, in many cases, especially with a lot of these newer managers, the Kevin Cashes, the Aaron Boones that don't necessarily have a lot of actual experience,
Mhm.
you're managing the expectations of the front office, and you're I wouldn't necessarily say managing by a database or by a computer, but you do have to play the analytics, because that's what the front office brought you in to do. So, it's tough to manage, and I don't know how a lot of the older managers and I guess more of some of the traditional managers are going to kind of deal with that moving forward. Now you see in the Chicago White Sox bringing in Tony La Russa, one of the most legendary managers of all time. I don't know. I guess I can't really fathom him managing not by feel and managing by a computer. So I think that's going to be an interesting dynamic to see that play out. And it's just another thing that coaches are having to kind of balance. And as the game goes on and progresses, like you had mentioned, with having to deal with agents and having to deal with $100 million contracts and having to deal with players that are making far more money to you, and I guess would be less replaceable than you in the grand scheme of things. It's really shifted the dynamic, and like you said, I would be more positive and not say that they have to be politicians, but they definitely have to be adequate communicators, and they have to adjust their leadership styles as the times go on.
Our Showtime guest has been Brian Rzeppa, author of the book You're Hired, A Guide to Working in Sports. And Brian, let me ask you this, and maybe unfair is not really, or fair is not really the correct word, because life isn't fair. But with everything that the manager has to go through, is it somewhat unfair to the manager to just basically judge him on his wins and losses and maybe just omitting everything else that he does really well behind the scenes?
Yeah, I think that it's really situationally dependent. If you look at a team like the Dodgers this year with Dave Roberts, if they were to have, won 20 games and lost 40, then, that's fair. That's, he's got this huge payroll, an incredibly talented team. So if you're not able to produce with that, regardless of what you can do with the team outside of that, it's really tough to overcome. But then you compare that to a situation, like my hometown Tigers here with Ron Gardenhire. You know, he probably would not have lost his job had he not resigned. But, it would have been, he was in a situation where, it wasn't really the primary focus was winning. It was developing talent, teaching these younger players to be professionals. And now, you move into a situation now where you have AJ Hinch, who has this World Series pedigree as a manager. And, now, not necessarily within the next year or two necessarily, but he's going to be, we're going to be start to be judging him based on wins and losses too. So I think that really I think as fans, we need to give a little bit more benefit of the doubt to the managers. If you're in a situation with young players with not much talent, you can only do so much with it. Like the manager can't go out and play himself.
Yeah.
So, there's only so much that you can do. And, I think that, like I said, with bigger market teams that have this high payroll, that have these higher expectations, then it becomes a little bit more fair to judge on wins and losses. But, it really is situationally dependent.
Yeah. Now, you said you worked around pro sports, mainly, the Detroit Tigers minor league system. Working around the players, the coaches, the managers, athletic directors, GMs, what have you. How did that help you? And what kind of insight did that provide you that assisted you in writing your book, You're Hired?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely just gave me, I guess, the baseline for what to expect. If I wouldn't have worked in professional sports, I guess wouldn't have known really the grind that it takes. And, your passion for sports is going to be tested all throughout it. I had talked to a general manager that was a general manager within Major League Baseball. And he kind of just explained to me his day-to-day life was, he gets to the ballpark around 8 o'clock, works until 5, works in his normal general manager, kind of role. And then he's sticking around for the game that evening, and he's there until, midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning. And so you're looking at a day where, you're not going to really be seeing your family. You're not going to be accomplishing much outside of work. So I think just looking at that work-life balance aspect of it, having gone through that to an extent myself, and not even to the extent that these guys do. I was going in at, 3 in the afternoon and staying until the end of the game, which was 12, 1 in the morning. And, even that was difficult. You're sitting there on weekends, you're sitting there, on nights. We've got social media now, so I can see my friends going out, my family being together, things like that. So, it really tests you, and it really, questions how much you want to work in sports and want this to be your career rather than just, watching on TV with your friends and family. And, I think that that's something that, I wouldn't ever dissuade someone from doing, what they want to do. But I think especially within the course of reading this book, you're really going to learn, this is what it's going to be like. And, if that's for you, that's for you. That's great. But if it's not, it's perfectly fine to just be a sports fan too. And, after 3 hours, you turn the game off, and that's your involvement in it. So I would never judge anyone for not going into it. But, with that being said as well, it can be an incredibly fulfilling career, and the highs of it are very high. So, it's all something that needs to be considered, and, you just need to make sure you have all the information going in.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me ask you, just curious, does writing energize or exhaust you?
I guess it really depends on what I'm writing about. Writing throughout this was a really great process. There wasn't anything that I was really slogging through. It was all information that I was interested in and things of that nature. Having writing for a local paper, there are some stories that come along that I'm not as enthused about. But, just ultimately speaking, writing is something that I enjoy, and something that I enjoyed throughout my college education as well. So that definitely aided me there to an extent. But yeah, I think that if you find something that you're interested in writing about, it really does. You get to get your passion out there.
Is writer's block real? And if so, what do you do to combat it?
I would lean on the side of it not being real. There's times where I don't feel motivated to write, and I guess I wouldn't attribute that to a writer's block or anything. But I think that some of the strategies that I've seen as far as overcoming that even though I don't necessarily subscribe to that, would be, just taking a break away from it, trying to focus your attention elsewhere. I guess for me though, I know I set, when I was going through the course of writing this book, I set different achievements for myself and goals for myself. Like I need to write so many pages today. I needed to outline things like that. So, that's how I kind of got through it. It was definitely, an intensive process, but I think that with the proper like outlining and things of that nature, it does make it a lot easier. And, one of the more overarching aspects, I think, is that the more that you write, the easier that it gets. So I think a lot of times you just got to go through it. And, if you do feel that writer's block, while I may not think it exists, if you do feel that, you just got to write through it and
Yeah.
just work through that, and you'll get through on the other end eventually.
Are you friends with other authors? Um, and are there other authors that inspire you to write?
Yeah, absolutely. I have just working throughout journalism and things of that nature. I've definitely made a lot of contacts through it, and I bounce ideas off of them, and send drafts to them, and it's nice to be able to have that network to kind of rely upon. And then I guess kind of looking throughout it, I think that that's something that writers should definitely look. Good writers, I think, are avid readers, and so whether it just be to get inspiration for your next book, for your next story, or just to kind of learn the style of the writers that you like. It's crucial to be able to read constantly and to, I guess, adapt some of those styles and kind of mold them to what works for your skill set. And yeah, I think that that's another way, I guess, if you're kind of at a standstill with writing, is to just start reading and get some inspiration there. It really is. I think that if you're a fan of literature, you're either going to be you've got to read and you've got to write. So yeah, anything that you can do to continue reading is definitely going to be important for the writing process.
Yeah, that makes sense. Um, so when you wrote the book, You're Hired, has that after it was all said and done, and you were able to reflect back on that, has it changed your process any for writing?
I think that, I mean, I guess I feel more confident in being able to write longer form pieces. Writing a 3-page longer form story is a little bit easier of a task that after having gone through that entire process. But I think, just overall, just having gone through the publishing process in general, it can be a very humbling experience as a writer. To get your work out there and to send it to the various publishing companies and things like that, you're going to get a lot of rejections. And so you need to learn to not take that personally. And, once you do eventually get accepted to, whatever publishing contract it may be, that's a huge win in itself. But that's really when the real work starts. A lot of people ask me different characteristics about the book in general. And I think that, I have been finished writing the book for, coming up on a year now. And so that's just kind of how long the publishing process takes. So, going through the editing process, you send what you think is excellent work. And then to get back with a lot of what you thought was good, maybe not so good to an editor. So,
Yeah.
you really do learn to be humble in your writing and learn to accept criticism and, just adapt. And I guess with that being said, if you really do feel passionate and about writing, and you do go through the editing process and things like that, there definitely are some things that you can say that, like, this is a non-starter for me. I'm not going to change this. And so while you should definitely have an ego, or you should definitely not have an ego, you should, maintain, what you feel is important to you within a book. And so, I mean, it's really just a fine line to balance. And I guess, moving forward for me, like I said, it has given me more confidence as a writer. And, just going through the entire thing has just been an incredibly, is, I think, made me more knowledgeable about writing, and has made me, more, like I said, more confident within the process itself.
How long did it take you to write this book? From the time, counting your research, laying it out, taking this piece, putting it here, moving things around, right up to publication. How long did it take you to write your book?
Oh man. So I guess with the interview process started, and that took, I would think, about 2 months in itself. Then you added my own research into it, and that, I mean, the research that happened before, and that's probably another 2 months into it itself. Then writing it itself. I think that a lot of writers will tell you, I guess, with writing nonfiction, a lot of the writing itself may be the most straightforward part of all of it. So I would say from start to finish, my first draft probably took maybe 5 months or so. And then, once you get into editing and all that, and, you're working on the cover art, you're working on a marketing plan, overall, it was probably a good over a year to
Uh,
actually getting to the publishing date. Yeah, I would say a year and 3 months would probably be a good estimate. So yeah, I would definitely not go into writing expecting that you'll have a book published within a month or two. It's you'll be holding your breath for a little bit too long.
yeah, that's a lot of passion, a lot of dedication, to put that amount of time into something. And obviously, another motivation, motivating factor would be the love of the game. You love sports, and I would imagine it makes it much easier to write about something that you love and that you enjoy.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just getting the feedback from it too. Thus far, it officially was published yesterday, or officially was released yesterday. But there's been pre-orders and things of that nature, so I've got started to have feedback rolled in, and it has been great to hear. It's been I feel good after hearing the feedback. So it's great to have that aspect and knowing that I think this was the first book that my dad read in about 30 years. So,
Wow,
to overcome that hill, I think that having being my dad, I think that he's required to read it. But I think that, like
I
for one of
was
the
going to ask you. I was going to ask you that, and you brought up your dad. I was going to ask you about what kind of role, supportive role, has your family played into you, writing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, with it, anything that I've done along in my life, they've been a super supportive influence and a really stabilizing influence. So, it's nice to really not have to fight through adversity or anything to be able to write the book. My family has been 100% supportive along the way. My girlfriend has been 100% supportive along the way. So, it's really been great to have that support in place. And now that the book has been published, to have, I guess, that cheerleading team in place. And I know my mom had recently moved to Florida, and I know every talk to her very regularly, and I know she's getting the word out there about the book down there. So just having that in place, it really is great, and it's great to feel supported along the way, whether it be in book writing or anything. So it really has been a tremendous experience from that aspect too.
That's great. Earlier you had hit on marketing. How are you marketing your book at present time?
Yeah, so that's a lot working hand in hand with the publisher. They have their different channels and avenues and things of that nature. They have Facebook ads and Amazon ads and different Amazon sales, things of that nature. And there's different avenues for selling books that I would have never even thought of. So having them along the way, and then I guess even from a just more traditional route, thank you for having me on the show. This is a way of marketing and, doing different podcasts, radio, newspaper interviews. I really feel like I've I've covered every aspect of my book over the last few weeks and every aspect of my life over the last few weeks. So that's going to continue coming throughout the rest of this year too. So it's been great that people have been willing to talk to me about it, and I'm more than happy to. Even though I feel like I feel like I'm tired of hearing my own voice at this point, but it's been great so far.
Is your mind always writing? Like, for example, you're driving down the road in a car, or you lay your head on a pillow at night. Is it hard to turn it off?
Luckily for me, falling asleep has never been the problem. It's always staying asleep that's the issue. But no, I mean there are different things that come up. Really, just I mean now I guess it's been a little bit cut back with the lockdowns and coronavirus and things of that nature, so I haven't been able to get out quite as much. But there's always things that you see like on Twitter and things, and that different stories that are happening throughout the world where you're thinking like, wow, that would be really interesting to dig deeper into. And at this point, like I said, I've got the second book coming along the way too. You don't want to overextend yourself, so I've had to hold back a little bit with my writing, and so once we do move a little bit further on that second book, maybe I'll be able to explore some of these different ideas that I have further. But at this point, I've got to find that balance.
Okay, you got a young guy out there watching and listening to you right now, that wants to perhaps get into writing, doesn't really have that confidence. What kind of advice would you give to anybody of any age that wants to write a book, but doesn't really have that confidence?
Yeah, so I mean, the first thing to do is to just start writing. Everyone in the world, I think, would tell you that even just talking in the course of writing this book, I've talked to people and they've said, and told them that, yeah, I'm writing this book, and it's coming out whenever. And one of the more regular things that I've heard is like, oh, I've had this idea for this book, but I just really haven't gotten going with it. So the first key step is just start writing. There's all the time in the world to think about things, but to actually start and commit yourself to getting started, that's going to be the good thing. Like I had said, throughout the writing process myself, I set different goals where, hey, I want to get 10 pages written today, or I want to get a couple chapters in today. Setting that kind of accountability metrics for yourself, that's going to be huge as well. Making it part of your routine. You don't have to. A book can be released at any time, so you don't need to think that I have to have 150 pages written by the end of the month. Just making it part of your routine, getting it one day at a time, that's going to be huge. And once you do eventually get to the point where you've got this first draft done, then you kind of just got to shop it around. And I think that one of the things that's going to be crucial, it's going to be easy to rely upon your friends and family to look at your book, or to look at your first draft. But as much as I say, my family has been supportive 100% along the way, that can come with some negatives as far as, getting feedback on your first draft and things like that. Friends and family are obviously going to be a little bit softer on you and not be as critical as, someone that doesn't know you. So, you do have to reach outside of your circle. You do need to get feedback and be willing to accept that feedback.
Sure.
That first draft is never going to be something that's going to be published. That's just kind of the way that it is.
Yeah.
So, you do need to, commit yourself to writing, actually get started writing. And then, like I said, work outside of your circle and get feedback from out of your circle. And with, the internet the way that it is now, and different writers groups and Facebook groups that are online, it's easy enough to find someone that's willing to read what you've put out there. But like I said, you've just got to be willing to listen.
Yeah. Hey, Brian, if you're game, if you're up to it, let's kick the ball around a little bit, just for fun. I'd like to throw some off-the-wall questions at you, kind of like a rapid-fire round, if you will, just for fun. Maybe perhaps gives the viewers something to laugh about. Also, the bottom line, though, is maybe it gives them an opportunity to learn more about you. Brian, rather than the writer. Are you game for that? Are you up for that?
Absolutely. It's a good way to get my day going here.
Okay. All right. Well, here we go. Round one. Let me ask you. You're sitting in a restaurant. You're eating French fries. Ketchup, mustard, or mayo?
I'm glad that you start me off here. I have a very strong take regarding this. So I'm a very anti-ketchup person. I really can't stand ketchup on anything. I think that it overpowers everything. So of those options, I'm definitely going with mustard. But I would add the caveat. I'm from the Midwest here, so you've got to have a side of ranch with the fries. That's the key.
You're the first guy I've met that doesn't like ketchup. That's really cool. I'll have to get your autograph after the show. So let me ask you, speaking of books, what was the first book that you read that made you cry?
Oh man, I don't know that I've ever cried from reading a book. One of the more emotional that I've ever gotten, though, I read one of the biographies on John F. Kennedy, and so that was very sad. But I still don't think that a book has moved me to tears yet. But like I said, I read constantly, so maybe that's coming down the line.
As a writer, what would you choose as your mascot or your avatar or your spirit animal as a writer?
Oh man. I think that mascot, I would probably go with Tiger. Not only, the Detroit Tigers, so I have the connection there, but I think there are a lot of slogs within the writing process where you lose that motivation at times. So I think constantly having that tiger, nipping at you at the tail there, nipping at your ankles there, that's going to probably motivate me to keep moving forward.
As a fan, which is your favorite sport and why?
Boy, that's tough. Baseball, I've always played baseball throughout my life, so I think that that's probably where I would say that that's my favorite. Just I think my favorite aspect of baseball is that you can't take a knee, you can't run out the clock. You've got to go pitcher versus batter, and there's no there's no taking knees, there's no getting out of that. I think favorite sport to watch in person though is probably hockey. I like the fast nature of it.
Red Wings?
Obviously, up until a few years ago, they had made the playoffs every year of my life, but now I think we're paying for that.
A lot of people don't realize this, but before the Red Wings ran into their dry spell, if you will, they made the playoffs 25 consecutive years in a row. I mean,
Yep.
think about that. I mean, isn't that an amazing accomplishment in any sport?
It was nice to be able to rely upon, but yeah, now like I said, I'm dealing with that now, and now we're back to the dead wings, unfortunately.
Yeah, but I think Steve Eiserman is a good fit. Obviously, came back, and I think he's going to get that team turned around. Might take a
Oh,
little time, but
very optimistic, very confident, and
so the Detroit Tigers. I have to bring this up. Everything that surrounding AJ Hinch over there in Houston. So the Tigers hiring Hinch, smart move or otherwise?
maybe an unpopular opinion, but I absolutely love the move. You're bringing in a guy with a World Series pedigree. I know that he had the cheating stuff with the Astros, but it's sports. Just win. That's really my mindset on it. There we can go on all day long about the morality of it and things of that nature, but when you get into it, there's players that have had various run-ins and things of that, and it's very tough to have a moral high ground as a sports fan. So just win.
Yeah, I have to agree with you, but I don't want to sound double standard on a different show. I said that I did make a comment that if they hired Cora or Hinch, I would throw my Tigers cap away. But looking back at this and analyzing it a little bit more closely, I think that you nailed it when you said the pedigree that he brings with him. You just had this not happen, the Tigers never have a chance of
Nope.
landing a guy like Hinch. So maybe a blessing in disguise, perhaps, for Detroit.
Absolutely, and I mean, like I said, it's. I think that especially, it's in the United States, especially, we're a society of second chances, and everyone is rooting for. I guess I wouldn't say everyone yet is rooting for AJ Hinch, but he paid his debt. He did everything that Major League Baseball asked of him, and I know that people would have expected a bigger suspension, a bigger penalty out of him, but like he lost his job. He was suspended from baseball for a year. He paid his debt, and now if it wasn't the Tigers that hired him, it's not like he was going to go out, or he wasn't going to go without a job. So I'm glad that the Tigers got the best manager on the market and one of the best managers in baseball. And so I know a lot of people, and I can understand the frustration with hiring someone that has that on the record, but I want to win.
I
I'm tired of
agree.
losing.
You hit it right on the head there. He was penalized. He served his sentence, so to speak. What? He's not supposed to ever work again.
Right.
I agree. And I think actually this will make him a better manager. I believe in the long run. Having
Yeah. Yeah, and especially with dealing with this younger team in Detroit here, you I think he's admitted himself that it kind of got away from him and he lost some control within his own organization, and so now with this younger team he's going to have that lesson in mind, and this is his chance to this is his redemption, and so having that motivator along with it and having him be able to mold these young players, I think that it's going to be great.
Brian, the sports gods appear out of the clouds and say, Brian Rzeppa, you can be the general manager of any pro sports team. Which team does Brian choose and why?
I've got to choose my Detroit Tigers. It's there's no way I could choose anyone different. I think that not only do I have my personal connection to it, but you're working in a market that is incredibly forgiving and is willing to accept that underdog role. I think the city of Detroit just generally has that underdog, again, Detroit versus everybody mindset, and having that kind of support is great. Not only that, you have an owner who's willing to spend, and just through really every aspect that you would want from an organization. And not only that, I'd be able to get my family, I'm sure, some great sweet tickets. So I'd move up my family rankings as well. So I'd say that the Tigers would be the perfect. Overall, if we're looking at the entire sports landscape, I would probably choose the athletic director of Michigan as well, the University of Michigan. So
there you go.
Whichever one works, I'll accept either.
You're not going to be choosy. You'll take whichever one they'll give you. Our Showtime guest is Brian Rzeppa, author of the book You're Hired, a guide to working in sports. So, Brian, the Fords, they get done, they read your book. They're really enamored by you. Like, wow, this guy really knows his stuff. Your phone rings. It's Martha Ford on the phone. And she asks you, Brian, what should I do? Fire Patricia or retain him? What's your response?
So I should say that I am currently employed by Ford. So if they're calling, I would probably have my heart would skip a beat for a second there. So from the aspect of looking at the Lions, I will preface this with saying I was a fan of the logic behind the Patricia hire, and I thought that he could be the person that brings them beyond that 8-8, 9-7. That hasn't happened so far. Last year, I wouldn't really count against him. Matt Stafford, the quarterback, got hurt. But at this point, I think a lot of the excuses are kind of running out. And, we're into this third year now. I would say that 3 years would be what the bare minimum of what I would give a coach. But, man, it's getting tough. I would lean on the side of firing. If they somehow turn it around and make the playoffs this year, then by all means. But, yeah, I cannot envision really a scenario in which Matt Patricia should be employed beyond this year.
It wasn't too long ago I interviewed Glover Quinn.
Oh, yeah.
Formerly of the Lions. And I asked him about the question about bringing in Patricia. And, and he basically stated, and I'm paraphrasing, and Quinn, he's a real positive guy. He's not going to speak ill of anybody. He's a God-fearing, loving guy, great family man. He's a baller, and he's filled with positive energy. But having said that, he did commit to the fact that he did agree with me when I made the statement that the Lions were maybe 2 or 3 players away from being really competitive when Caldwell was the coach. And then they bring in Matt Patricia, and he basically blew it all up. Did you kind of feel the same way regarding that?
Yeah, so I was a fan at the time of moving on from Caldwell. I was really appreciative of the job that he had done to that point, but I just didn't really think that he was going to be the coach that brought them over that next hump and, winning playoff games and competing really seriously. I think especially within that last year that Caldwell was in Detroit, I think that Matt Stafford had something like 7 fourth quarter wins. And so I think that a lot of it was guided by Stafford, and I think that the logic was that, you know, you have this coach with, you know, he's won in New England, and, you know, he had, obviously was not, you know, the head of the organization, but, you know, was within that culture. And I think that where we really kind of went off the rails was, as a coach, you know, you come in and you do have to instill your own culture. And with that, that does come with, you know, weeding out some of the players that aren't willing to live up to that. But with that being said, you do need to be able to adapt to, you know, the team that you do have. And, you know, you had a team that won 9 games the year before, and, you know, whether it be a mirage or not because of fourth quarter close wins, things like that. But it's tough as a fan base to take, you know, going from 9 wins to going to 4 wins, and it's tough to be able to accept that. And it's obviously, you know, they have not overcome that as of this point. And, you know, maybe if they gave Patricia another few years, but that's not how sports work. You know, you can't. These are $100 million organizations, $1 billion organizations, and you just don't have that flexibility to be able to do so. And, you know, I guess you could say that the Lions don't have a winning tradition or anything like that, so you should have a longer leash. But there does come a point where, you know, the fan base is obviously completely against him. A lot of the players, there was almost apparently like a mutiny last year with players, and they've shipped out a lot of those guys. But, you know, I think that there are pieces in place for this Lions team to be successful. You know, they still have Matt Stafford. You know, they've invested in the offensive line. They have strong players in the skill positions, but, you know, there's just something missing at this point, and
Yeah.
it's really tough.
They brought him in, Brian, because he's supposed to be a defensive guru. The
Yep.
offense we can work with. You know, we got a good quarterback. We got some guys up there on the offensive line. You know, they stay healthy. Wide receiver, if we bring back, you know, if we pay Galloway, you know, running back, not bad. So offense, they can get it done. We can work with that. But the defense is the real failure of
Yep.
this team. And that really surprised me because some of the guys that we had brought in, you know, and correct me if I'm wrong, they must have flipped 85, at least 85% of that roster through free agency and as well as drafting, because Coach Patricia didn't have a locker room. So
Yep.
I think he was forced to flip the roster. He really had no choice. So anyway,
Oh,
yeah,
sorry. And I mean, I think that one of the things that frustrates the fan base too is that, you know, like you said, he comes in as a defensive coach, this defensive-minded guru, and he hasn't called plays on defense. Through his first few years, he had Paul Pasqualoni, and now he's got Corey Unlin, who came from an Eagles secondary that was, or is an Eagles defensive backs coach, and the Eagles defensive backs were not great. So it's really tough for fans to kind of deal with that. And I think that Patricia was pushing a system that worked in New England, where it's kind of a bend, don't break, where the Lions just don't have the talent. They don't have the pieces to be able to lock in, you know, within the red zone. And it's tough to overcome that. And, you know, you see the Patriot way is using players to the best of their strengths, but the Lions have so many players with weaknesses that are uncovered, and teams pick that apart. And it's been shown over the last 3 years, unfortunately.
let me put you on the hot seat. You're the GM of the Lions, okay? With all the problems that they have on defense, you know, we need a lot of bodies. Do you tie up all of that money in Galloway, or do you let them walk and bring in other players, you know, to utilize that money for other players? What does Brian, the GM, do?
It's tough. I mean, you've got Marvin Jones. That's probably going to be his contract is going to be running up pretty soon too. So if you lose Galladay, you're going to pretty much be starting from scratch at skill positions. And I guess with this front office, I really haven't trusted them. I mean, they've spent big money on the defensive side of the ball. You know, they brought in Jamie Collins, Trey Flowers. You know, Desmond Trufant is making a decent amount of money. So I don't know if spending has really been the issue on defense. It's just been, at this point, I mean, how can you not say that it's just scheme? As far as Galladay goes, that's a tough to deal with too. I mean, he's 27 years old, so he's probably in his athletic prime right now. And, you know, you give him 4 years, 80 million. The back end of that deal is probably going to be a little bit tougher to deal with. If they were to get an offer, say they franchise tagged him or something, kept him for another year. If they were to get an offer that was something of a day one draft pick, an early day two draft pick, I'd have a very, very tough time turning that down, just because, I mean, Galladay is a tremendous receiver, but he hasn't been able to stay healthy. He's getting a little bit older, as he's 27 years old. I use that term relatively, but I don't know. I mean, especially if we're going into a rebuild here with a completely new front office, a completely new coaching staff, his window for competition, I don't think would line up with the Lions' window, especially if they're going to be losing Stafford at any point soon. So I would be on the side of not retaining him.
Yeah.
But if given that they're able to get something in return for him, assuming that they franchise tag him or something.
As tough as it is, as it is, but it is a business. And, if I was GM, you brought it up, with the rebuild, his age, things just aren't really locking in. If they're a player or two away, yeah, you give them the money, but we're not at that luxury with doing that. So I would lean toward, going for, the draft picks, but they better not go bust on who replaces them. Otherwise, they'll never live it down. He has a marvelous talent. He's a good person. He is the dream of every football team out there in a prototype wide receiver. He is just absolutely an amazing talent.
Yeah, he's big, he's fast, he catches it. You don't have to worry about drops. I mean, any team would be lucky, including the Lions, to have him. But yeah, it's really tough. And I think that, if you do pick up that an extra day one pick, an extra day two pick,
yeah,
you do have opportunities to be able to get these younger players. You see players contributing, especially at wide receiver, younger and younger these days, and even rookie receivers now there's quite a few around the league that are really killing it. And it's tough to justify paying a guy $20 million when, you're, like you said, that timeline might not add up.
Yeah, that could go a long way in shoring up your football team. Congratulations, you're now the manager of the Detroit Tigers. What type of music is blaring out of your office?
So I generally lean towards more country music and classic rock. From what I've found within minor league clubhouses, at least, that's not really the case. Not a lot of country music and classic rock being played. So I think I'd probably have to update my iTunes and maybe switch it up, update my Spotify, get a little bit newer. I think I'd have to update it.
So you're doing a PR stunt for your book, and Major League Baseball, all the teams are in agreement that you get the pick, doing the PR stunt with their team, and you're going to be their mascot for the day. So what team and what mascot would you choose?
I've stuck with the Tigers thus far, and I'm not changing now. I've got to go with Paws. It's old reliable for me here. I think it was the first mascot I ever met, so always got to rely on that. But then if you go a step further, go with the Mud Hens, the Toledo Mud Hens, the AAA affiliate. If you go with Muddy and Madonna, those are also two winners there too. So it's tough, but I think that I'll probably stick to Paws with Muddy and Madonna on speed dial as backups.
I tell you what, we got some Milwaukee Brewer fans watching this program, I'm sure. And I would not want to be Bernie Brewer because he's up there too high. And my luck, I would slide down that slide and like, whoop, and just end up into the crowd somehow.
Keep it going.
Yeah. And the sausages, forget it. This guy isn't running.
Not only that, you gotta remember, if Randall Simon's in attendance, you might be getting hit if you're a sausage there. So gotta keep that in mind as well.
You know what? I said Major League Baseball, but I would rather be Rory of the Lions.
That's true.
My theme song would be "The Lions Sleep Tonight," and I would be able to get to sleep every game day along with the team.
Plus, you've got a wider audience there too. That's an important aspect. You're promoting the book. You got to do that there.
Yeah. I told you we're going to ask some off the wall questions. What color is your toothbrush?
White.
In
Straight up, straight white.
What? Straight white?
Perfectly white.
Wow. Describe yourself. You stole that from a hotel, didn't you?
I did not. It's an electric one, so I've got that one.
I'm just joking. Describe yourself using 3 words.
Oof.
Yeah.
Boy, that's tough. That's my least favorite topic to talk about.
Hey,
I would
you know, I gather that, and a lot of people don't like to talk about themselves. But tell it. I asked. I'm the one that asked. Hit us with it. What are 3 words that best describe you?
I would probably say I'm a very driven person. That would probably be the number one. I'm very motivated in that way. Depending on who you ask, I am. How would I put this in a positive way towards myself? I don't want to say that I'm anal. I would say detail oriented. I
Oh,
would I would I would say that is again depending on who you ask on that one. And then the third one, I would like to say that one of my positive aspects about myself is I'm a very caring person, care about those around me. So that's where I go. Driven, detail oriented, and caring.
if you could go back and talk to any U.S. president, who would you talk to, and what would the nature of the conversation be?
Whew, that's tough.
Yeah.
There's again 45 now. We'll see what happens, but maybe 46 to choose from. Man, in recent, or I guess more recently, maybe within my dad's lifetime, would be. I think that like I had mentioned with JFK, that'd be an extremely interesting conversation to have. Thinking about the Cuban Missile Crisis, one of the very near misses in not only United States history but world history. Just kind of, it'd be interesting. I know I've read books about his brother's account of that time, but getting to hear from the man himself would be really really interesting. I guess to kind of go back even further, if I were to go to the start of the country, George Washington, learning to see the founding fathers and kind of getting him caught up to speed with what's going on now. How does his vision for the country, how does it fall within that? I guess those would probably be my top 2.
Very interesting. Elevator or stairs?
That is a conditional answer as well. I would say that I'm very scared of heights, so I generally don't like elevators that have the full window background. So if that is the option, I'm taking the stairs. But in every other option, I'm probably just going to take the elevator. Going to take the easy way out there.
My man. So, what time of the day are you most productive?
Oh boy. I would consider myself to be a morning person. I'm always up pretty early. I don't sleep in really at all. So I get a lot of good work in at that time. But then with that being said, I also do get some solid work in right before bed at the end of the night. So I guess just right around that 8-hour window of early morning or late night.
Favorite or least favorite food?
Least favorite for sure is olives. I don't know why. I really can't stand them. I like salty things, so it should be right up my alley, but really cannot get into olives. Favorite food? That's tough. I really can never turn down a solid burger, but same thing with pizza. Really just nothing healthy. Burgers, pizza, pasta, any of those. If I had to choose one, if I had to choose a food for the rest of my life, I would probably choose burgers.
Yeah, if I could high five you, I would right now. Do you have a nickname?
Oh, yes. Well, again, that's
You
another
can't
one.
share it?
Depending on who you ask. I don't know the last time that my family has actually called me Brian. It's very rare to hear. So I think my dad has throughout the entire of my life has called me Lou. And to get to the origin of that, I really don't have an answer. I still don't think I've got the answer to why I'm called that, but that's the name.
How do you like your steak prepared?
So another rare opinion for me here. I'm not so I don't dislike steak. It just would not be anywhere near my favorite, and I think that a good steak is generally wasted on me.
Oh,
But if I'm eating steak, it's probably going to be medium.
mm. I know a guy that will eat it for you. Our Mindoro journey, OMJ, down here in Mississippi. Um, Cats or dogs?
Dogs for sure. Not even a second thought.
Yeah, me too. I'm a dog guy. What is your favorite TV channel?
Ooh, I have for one, I've been watching a lot of Netflix lately, so that's a little bit off. Big sports guy. That's usually the only thing I really watch on actual TV. So I guess if I had to say, probably ESPN. If I'm not watching ESPN, I have been watching a lot of diners, drive-ins, and dives lately. So that's with Guy Fieri. So that's where I'm at this point.
Awesome. If you owned a yacht, I don't know, maybe you already do, you know. But if you owned a yacht, what would you name it?
Ooh. So I really don't like to be on the water, so that's a tough hill to overcome.
Maybe help.
Yeah. The SOS would probably be the name of the yacht there.
SOS. That would be funny.
If you see me, please come save me and get me to land.
Oh my gosh. Cake or pie, Brian?
Cake, not even a question.
Where do you want to most travel?
Ooh, that has been a constant thought throughout quarantine so far, and not being able to travel. Um, I really do. I think a goal of mine is to visit all 50 states within the United States. So that would be at the top of the list. Longer term than that, really would like to go to Italy, and then I would also like to go to the Philippines as well. You know, that kind of area of the world. I had a few friends visit, so that would be up there as well. I think I have a very varied travel interest, so I'm really willing to go anywhere.
The Philippines is a beautiful country. The people here are very hospitable. Just the Filipino people are just absolutely amazing. Um, it's a culture that struggles economically, but they're rich in character. And I've never seen a people, Brian, that have so little, but yet feel so blessed and are always happy. It's an amazing energy to be around. I love it here. Yeah, I know that you would, and it would be a very inexpensive trip as well. Yeah,
Right.
it sure would be, and very worthwhile. Um, so let me ask you a question. Is it wrong for a vegetarian to eat animal crackers?
Well, so my brother's girlfriend is a vegetarian, so for the sake of her, yes, she can continue. She can continue her animal crackers.
Okay, would you rather cuddle? It's a cold, wintry night in Michigan. Would you rather cuddle with a baby panda or a baby penguin?
Oh, penguins are my favorite animal.
Wow.
But I would have to go with the panda. They seem like they'd be much warmer
Yeah, a
and
little bit warmer.
longer arms as well.
Oh my goodness. The movie, Godfather or Star Wars?
Godfather, again, that's not even a second thought for me. Godfather is one of my favorite movies.
Absolutely. Paper or plastic? How many times have you ever heard that over the years?
I think, yeah, I was gonna say, I think it's been beaten into me that I got to go with paper.
Would you go to a movie alone?
Yes. However, with that being said, I really don't go to the movies that often, but I would not be opposed to going by myself.
Me too. I have no problem with that whatsoever. So I'm in a bookstore and I'm thumbing through the books and looking at books. And I pick up a book written by Brian Rzeppa, author of the book You're Hired, A Guide to Working in Sports. Um, why would I want to buy that book?
Yeah. So with this book specifically, there's sports fans all across the world, and whether you're a sports fan at the professional level, college level, even the youth level, I've talked to high school coaches and stuff like that. So, if you're interested in getting some background on into your favorite teams, how they operate, and some of that information that goes on beyond the field, this is definitely the book for you. Like you had mentioned, it's pretty in depth as far as the different details that are involved in it, and then even beyond that, if you're more than a sports fan and you want to work in sports, this is just going to give you that guide to how do I get to these top positions, how do these top positions get filled, and just kind of having that roadmap moving forward, I think would really help you in your career and then in your fandom as well.
Our guest has been Showtime guest Brian Rzeppa, author of the book You're Hired, A Guide to Working in Sports. Brian, on behalf of our viewers, I want to thank you very much for taking time out of your schedule today and visiting with us. It was a blessing to have you on, and we wish you the best of luck with your publication. And do you have any closing thoughts about, anything in general? May it pertain to writing or how people can go ahead and purchase your book?
Yeah, absolutely. And I would say that the easiest way to go about it is, it's going to be at any book retailer, but the easiest way to go about it is just going through Amazon, searching You're Hired, A Guide to Working in Sports. That's going to be the easiest way to obtain it from there. Just kind of looking overall, if anyone does have any questions as far as writing, has any questions about the book, by all means, I'm available on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, everything. My username on everything is just my name, Brian Rzeppa. So easy enough to find me if anyone has any questions about the writing process, publishing, sports, whatever it may be. I'm always willing to be out there. And yeah, I really do appreciate the opportunity to talk to you today and really had a great time with it.
Yeah, me too. And I'm sure our viewers did as well. Thank you. Brian, thank you so much. We really appreciate you.
Thank you. And have a good weekend coming up here.
Thank you very much. And don't you go away. We've got the Showtime shout-outs coming up next. Welcome to Showtime Shoutouts. Want to thank my beautiful wife, Cha Squad, for all of your support, and you are my best friend in the whole world. Kathy O'Palawan, a wonderful, gifted talent. Check out her channel, just an amazing recording artist. Check her out. Detroit Lions on the Prowl. If you're a sports fan, this is the channel for you. If you love Detroit sports, you're not going to want to miss it. Would also like to take the time to thank my very good friend in Tennessee, Nashville, Tennessee, JC Watts. Thank you, JC, for your support and your friendship. Happy Dutch family, thank you. Thank you very much, and Mr. Bean and all the beanies. Thank you, guys and gals. Really appreciate all of you. Franceschi Channel, wonderful person, great supporter of many people. Thank you, Franceschi Channel. John Baker from Fargo, North Dakota. Thank you very much, John, for your support as well as your friendship. Also want to thank Darren's Travels. Darren, congratulations on your watch hours and being monetized. Good for you, brother. Also want to thank 2006-10 and these other channels, Santos Chronicles, for leaving comments underneath my videos. Christian Nomad, thank you very much. Arnage Jen, thank you for visiting my channel. Very appreciative. B Boo Fam Vlog, thank you. John Ray Dinesco, thank you for commenting. In addition, I want to thank Man's Channel TV Vlog. Thank you too, Melody Max, for visiting my channel, leaving comments, as does Pogi Boy Productions. Strays helping Davao, Philippines. Thank you very much. Big shout out to Katoto Adventures. Thanks to all of you. Thanks to all for supporting POD Philippines On Demand and my new program titled Showtime. Want to just give a big shout out to all of you. For those of you who are wondering how you can make it onto the Showtime shout out, here's the formula in which I use. I usually go back over my past 3 videos that I uploaded. So I go by the people that enter into my live streams for my premieres, during the running of my premieres, and in addition to those that don't make it to the premiere, whenever somebody leaves a comment under the video, those are the ones that I will go back and I will include in the Showtime shout-out segment. So that's how it goes down. So when people come and visit me, I put you right here on Showtime shout-outs. Again, I want to thank each and every one of you for not only being a supporter, but for being a friend of mine. Take care. Thank you very much.